Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I have a special guest. His name is Joe DeStefano, and he is totally one of the coolest people you'll ever meet. I hope you enjoy this fragment of the conversation that we had on my podcast, the Daily Inspirational Podcast, which you'll see here, and you can catch the links below to get to it through my website. And of course, Joe's podcast from Los Angeles, known as the Stacked Podcast, which you'll also see here as well, and there's a link to it down below. Today's conversation is about stress and stress in our lives. These are just excerpts from the main podcast, which you can pick up on either Joe's podcast on Apple or mine as well. But either way, I'm telling you, pay attention, soak it up a little bit, because there's a lot of great things about this podcast that can help you to deal with stress and to keep your body and your mind healthy. So I hope you enjoy it, and don't forget to check out the links below. Thanks.
Right.
A lot of the patients that I've seen over the years, people ask me, so you're a chiropractic neurologist. What does that mean? I kind of dispel the chiropractic piece. I just look at a human and look at their neurology. So I can look at heart rate variability, pulmonary activity, gut, digestion, reflexes, and all those have something to do with the brain. The brain controls all that.
Right.
Now, with my training over the number of years, and I understand much more than I ever did about what parts of the brain are creating this response, and then go back and take a look at it. So what I've learned and that I want to share with people is that when you undergo some sort of a trauma and you bury it, your brain is just trying to bury it to let you move on.
Right.
But it's like, it's a little bit of a Pandora's box. It's sitting there with the memory in it. And what you don't realize is that portion of your brain never stops firing. It's constant. When you go to bed tonight, your thinking brain's not beating your heart. It's not controlling variability.
Right.
It's the emotional brain that's doing it.
Right.
So that emotional brain has something in it that has been associated with a major emotional event.
Right.
So what I see in my practice is a lot of women who have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder from some sort of sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them that I've experienced, don't even see it that way and have never told anybody about the events.
Right.
I had a young woman that came to see me. She's 30, and she's been dizzy for 7 years. Just a mess.
That might be inconvenient.
All right. I'm like, oh, that stinks. She can't drive a car. She can't do much of anything. So I'm like, all right. So I talked to her for a while, and we go through this little communication, a little consult, and I realized that she's already seen 5 other physicians.
Right.
And nobody's made an accurate diagnosis or any diagnosis, right? And I'm like, well, maybe they think that she's making it all up, psychosomatic. So I could talk more. And I said, could you do me a favor? She said, sure. Why don't you stand up? Let me take a look. I always start my examinations by just observing the patient. That's a good thing every doctor does, right? I should do.
Right.
So I look at her and I'm like, okay. So she's standing up, and picture this in your mind. She's standing in front of me with a rounded shoulder where she's got her hands cupped together in front of her, kind of like the crotch area, and she's kind of lumped over a little bit. And I said, okay, so that's you standing up, right? She goes, yeah. I said, okay. Now, as I said, I can look quickly at that body and go, that body is keeping the score for something that's in that brain.
Right.
And now I have to be able to figure out why she's dizzy. So I go, okay. So I go through all the things as a good neuro guy, and I go, none of them fit except one thing. She's losing blood supply to the frontal cortex of the brain. Doesn't know where she is in space. Well, how could that happen? So I go, okay. I started thinking about it. I said to her, have you been sexually abused? And she just looked at me like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And she didn't speak. She didn't move.
Deer in headlights.
And she was catatonic.
Right.
Like the moment of the trauma. So the minute I asked, she was transformed in her mind because she'd been triggered by the response of me asking. I triggered Pandora's box, opened it up, and she went right into that moment. She leapt into my arms, put her arms around me, cried like crazy. She was so emotional. And I said, it's okay. I mean, like you said, with this woman with you, I was like, whoa. But I had already been trained and understood this. I've seen this so often. I know it maybe caught you by surprise at that moment, but you're more skilled now.
I'm like, yo, I'm 22 on vacation. What are you?
Right. Come on, lady. What is this? So I grabbed this girl and I said, listen, you do not have to talk about it with me, but if you want to, I'm definitely the person who will listen and give you something to, to deal with. So she said, I want to, and I want to do it right now. She's known me 20 minutes. She made a connection.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it.
You're like, cancel my 3 o'clock.
Right. And I was, my wife runs the business, and I just, at the end of it, I said to her, I gave her that look with my eyes, like, don't ask, just do what I ask you right now. This is a volatile situation. So I sit with this gal, and we're talking about it. And I said, if I open this box up, it's going to send you back every time the way you feel right now, unless we can learn to cope with it.
Right.
I said, but do you want to know why you're dizzy?
Yeah.
She said, I do. I said, okay. So part of your emotional brain is hinged off a part of your brain called the hypothalamus. And that controls the autonomic nervous system that you talked about, right? It controls the action of the sympathetics, whereas the parasympathetics are driven by the vagal stimulants that you had talked about as well. So there's your dynamic interplay.
Right.
But the hypothalamus is the key in a person who has trauma. Emotional trauma. The amygdala, which houses the action, is talking to the hypothalamus, and that causes the constriction of blood vessels to the brain. So as soon as she realized that all of her dizziness was coming from a reduction of blood supply that was transient, coming and going, that all she had to do is be aware of what was producing it, and immediately, within 6 days, it stopped.
Right.
And it went that way for months until new traumas began to, or new stimulants, or keep opening Pandora's box. And we weren't done with the job yet, right? So the Me Too movement was pretty big. It was out. And that was when Kavanaugh and all that stuff was going on in Congress. So there was a lot of stuff going on. So she was triggered by that stuff. So I asked her, I said, when you watch like the Me Too thing, does that bother you? She goes, it immediately makes me dizzy. And I was like, oh, from a doctor and trying to solve cases, I'm like,
you're like,
this is, I was like, this is some cool stuff. I'm like, holy moly. And it was so beautiful because the patient teaches the doctor.
Right.
And when the doctor thinks he's going to teach the patient, he or she needs to wake up for a moment and have some humility to realize that the true essence of treating a person or helping somebody, the answer is right there. You just have to learn to discover it. Right. And until you open up your mind to the discovery process, you're going to get stuck like everybody else, either prescribing something or just moving them on to someone else. And I was that 5th guy or that 6th guy that she saw. She's like, I can't believe that you were able to ascertain what's going on. I'm like, listen, I see it in the body because the body kept the score. And if you saw her posture, she was literally protecting herself, from the waist down. And I said, I get it.
Yeah.
And now for every person that walks into my office, 93% of people that go to a doctor are there because stress drove them there.
Right.
Doesn't matter if they have an abnormal heartbeat, right? They got an arrhythmia, a heart variability issue.
Right.
It's stress induced most of the time.
100%.
Once in a while, Joe gets whacked in the head and almost dies, right?
Yeah.
That you overcame that. But then you live with the psychological trauma for the rest of your life.
Right.
PTSD.
Right.
Now, I'm not telling everybody at home how to fix PTSD, but let's just be aware that it's going on within us and find professionals that can help you to be aware of it so that you know that maybe you shouldn't be in a closed quarter with 50 people who haven't showered, like the T in Boston, right?
Right.
That's not going to serve you as well.
Right.
You're going to start to be triggered by, lots of difficulty breathing because you can't breathe because I'm in a place where it's confined and I'm underground and, oh my God. And now you're into full panic,
right?
Which is what people do. They go from anxiety and then they move to panic.
Right.
So there's a difference because panic is so powerful that it tells the entire body, wake up, let's go.
Yeah.
And now I'm either vomiting or I'm catatonic or I'm sick and I'm just freaked. And it's like, how did we get here?
Immune system zero. And I think a lot of people get into that loop. And if you think, I had a friend that went through a horrible divorce, and not long into this process, which was an extremely traumatic divorce, not long into this process, he's getting dizzy spells. And he needs, now this is one more thing I need to do. Now I need to go figure out why I have vertigo.
Right.
And then shortly after that, he had a checkup and he said, doc says I got to wear a Holter monitor because I have a little arrhythmia, and he's a little concerned about it.
Yep.
And, I don't know what this thing is. And, and then a month later, my back hurts and now I got to go to a chiropractor. And I'm like,
let's figure out what happened.
So what happens is you're extremely stressed and worried about your kids and the divorce and this and who's going to get the house and all this bullshit.
Right.
I don't know if I could say that. Hopefully.
You just did it. Didn't matter.
So you're worried about all this stuff. You're super stressed. But what happens is when folks don't identify that the stress is the cause, now you're a leper. Now you're the one, we can't figure out why you're dizzy. We can't figure out why your heart is irregular. We can't figure out why your back hurts.
Right.
No one knows. It's a mystery. You just hate your boss.
Right.
You just hate Mary Stinkpants.
This goes back to the original thing that you said, that you made a mountain out of a molehill that you didn't need to make.
Exactly.
And you created this environment in your head. Right. And you're angry when someone tells you that it's your fault.
Right.
You're like, what? I mean, once they wake up and go, oh my God, I have been a poop head.
Right.
I am literally angry at everyone around me.
Right.
It's like I've been teaching this to my clients for years. It's like we have an operating system. Like I'm a Mac user, so I'm an OS X guy. And my sister, for instance, is a PC user, so she's using Microsoft Windows. So she has a different platform or basic operating system. So she doesn't like using the Mac because she doesn't understand the operating system. But what if all she had was a Mac?
Right.
Well, now her operating system is that of Macintosh, and she's not very understanding of what her operating system is.
Right.
So as a consequence, she's being triggered by her world to be in a negative, unhappy, ugly state and doesn't know where it's coming from and begins to blame the rest of the world for it.
Right.
And doesn't understand that that's your operating system. So here's my operating system. Right. I have values. So I have a positive value structure and a negative value structure. And everyone says things like, I have family values. A value is an emotion, so you can't touch it. Yeah. You can touch a family. So there's really not, accurately, family values. There are just emotions that families bring us. So I go, okay. So I look at the emotion and say, what emotion do I experience that makes me run off the rails and just become an ugly version of myself? And I know what it is. It is disrespect. I've learned in my life through living in this Italian home.
I was going to say that's an Italian thing.
It's kind of an Italian cultural thing, right? And it is. So I firmly admit it, and I'm proud of it because it is who I am. So I realized that my number one negative value is disrespect.
Right.
I can't stand it.
Right.
What I've learned to do, though, is that when I feel disrespected, I feel awful. I get angry. My body changes. I start to sweat.
Right.
I talk louder. My jaw gets tight. And I want to punch the piss out of somebody. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
It's like I lost my damn mind. Well, somebody disrespected me.
Yeah.
But what I've learned to do about that is that if they disrespect me, I ask myself a question quickly. Did they do it on purpose? Did they know they did it? Or are they trying to drive and turn the knife as deep as they can?
They pushing your button.
Right. If they know to move that knife inside my abdomen and turn it, then I'm going to be in some bad place.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I say to myself, they don't know me very well. They didn't really mean to do that. I'm just responding to it because I am now aware.
Right.
And the awareness is really the key. I'm aware that I am a dickhead when you disrespect me. But I have to decide whether what you just did causes disrespect in reality. Are they trying to disrespect me or not? So yes, sometimes I get people that try to disrespect me, and then I lose it. And you know what I do with them? I move them as far away from me as possible because I don't want that stimulus. Goodbye. Yeah. But here's the flip side, and the beautiful side of all, is that if I have a negative emotional system of a value that gets pinged and I turn nutty, But if you add all the other negatives, they don't bother me that much.
Right.
Ignorance, stupidity, jealousy. I don't really care about those that much. I just don't want to be dissed.
Yeah.
Right. It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, my number one thing in life, well, I'm going to call it 1 and 2 because they're so connected. It's contribution and love. So I love to help people and to watch them prosper and to literally nothing I can give them except a level of perspective where they realize that, you know what? All I have to do is discover more about who I am and who I want to be.
Right.
And then life will turn around.
Right.
And then when they do it, I go, that's pretty cool.
Right.
So I always say this, like I'll show up at work at my office. Before I get there, I'm not doing major contributions because my job asks me to do that every day, right?
Right.
So maybe I have, and maybe I haven't contributed in the lives of my wife and kids and stuff before I get there. And let's just say everybody's left the house early and I wake up and go to work. So I walk into work with some sort of emotional mindset. But once I'm in there, if somebody disses me in my practice, it's going to upset me. But the beauty is I go to the next room and I meet the Joe DiStefanos of the world and say, hey, Doc, what's up? I need your help.
Yeah.
And I go, let's get to it. Yeah. And then when I'm in it helping you, I've automatically down-regulated that emotional response in my brain for the negative value.
Right.
And now I'm on fire.
Right.
All day long, I maintain my fire because I'm doing what I love. But if I didn't know how to do that, every environment that I walk into, every new environment, I will look for the person who's potentially going to disrespect me, and I'm going to do it to them before they do it to me.
Preemptively.
Yep. I'm going to do it to them.
Oh my
And
Lord.
then you're like, what? And this is a natural human behavior.
Yeah.
This is what people do. They're angry. They're upset. They're argumentative. You haven't met anybody like that? Of course.
Yeah.
How come? They're protecting their emotional system and don't have any awareness of how it works.
Right.
And what is it actually creating? To the thing we talked about at the beginning, it creates stress, the release of cortisol. Then it changes proteins in your body, makes you sick. And why are you so sick? Because of the events of your life. And how many people are living in the past? Most.